Flawless. Yeah,
Pretty
cheers.
hard to take seriously. Sorry.
I forgot that one was about to say recording in progress.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Yeah. My number three. Probably not a huge amount to say about this one. Is I don't know. I don't think either of you would come across this, but potentially might have is Replay by Ken Grimwood.
Yep.
Have you read that, Leon? Or you
Uh,
heard of it? Heard of it?
Definitely.
Yeah. Um, I absolutely love this book. I've read it like three or four times. And it's about a guy called Jeff Winston. So it's set in America in like the 80s. And the very first page, he's just at like a pub or bar having a beer, and he has a heart attack and dies. And he's aged like 47 or 48 or something. And then he wakes up and he's like, and then he wakes up and he's like 4 years old, but with the sort of memories of his previous life. So what the hell? And then over the next like 50, 60 pages, we follow him through the life. And he kind of has a very similar sort of life, doesn't really kind of take advantage of the situation. And then ends up at that exact age and exact time in a different situation, and he has a heart attack and dies again. And then he wakes up, and then he's 6, 7 years old. Um, and it goes on like that. And then I think I mentioned it when I talked about I can't remember what book it was earlier. That's mentioned there's another sci-fi one I can't remember. Where I really like the idea of what a person would actually do. So like Liam, you were saying, I think you were saying in one of your books, you were like sci-fi or the concept of it, like TV and film never really it's not really the best place for it 'cause it never takes it as far as it can go. I know in terms of big ideas, this isn't big ideas, but in terms of just how far they take this, it's brilliant. So he lives so many different lives, but the reason this goes from just being a really good idea and he does all the things like becomes a millionaire and he becomes like head of industry and he advances technology in the world by like hundreds of years. By the time he dies, where he can live a life. But every time he's getting older, when he gets to it's about a third of the way through the book, um, he stumbles across in one of his lives a lady called Pamela, and they discovered they are experiencing the same thing, albeit dying at different times. And they then spend a lot of the rest of the book essentially they spend trying to work out what's happening to them. Every time they die, they wake up in a different part of the original life. So the very first life they had, they come back, they wake up at a different point of that life, have to find each other, but every time they're older, and it's really sad. And it's probably the closest I've come. I mean, I've never tried a book, and I wouldn't fly over this one, but it's really like heart wrenching, gut wrenching because that at some point they're gonna just get to the point where they die, and then they come back, and then they die, and then that's it. And the way that Ken Grimwood, and he's one of those ones where one done. If you look at it, you type in his name on Goodreads. There's like five of the books with like 20 reviews, and this one's got like 90,000. It's just his one book. Um, it's it's really upsetting and really hits you in the feels and the way he writes it from the perspective of the main character that they're not gonna find a way because there isn't always an answer to to these things. It's not like they discover some guy who's like a magician and he goes, oh, this is the reason why now you can live together forever. Um, and it's just
That would have
really
been a better ending
well, it'd be a nicer ending.
if Paul Daniels came out.
No, yeah, but it's just really it's just the way he writes it. And then they end up obviously at the end they die and then they wake up and then it's like day and then they die and then that's sort of where it ends. But I'm really into these sorts of right. Thank you, Alex, for that.
No worries, man.
I say it's especially nice when you're talking when someone does it. It makes you feel like you really engage in your audience.
I can do two things at once.
And I like the idea of just what a person would do with this sort of information. And I've read a more modern version. I think it's called like the 15 Lives of Harry something by Claire North.
Yeah.
Um, Similar concept done well. And I think considering I think you said it, like time travel is a really sort of not there's not really a lot in that space in film that's been done really well or done on any sort of scale. Um, this one's a bit of a hidden gem for me. It's generally one of my favorite books. And when I had my book club at work, because I was an absolute rock star, there was like 12 of us, and I took this one and to read it, and everyone absolutely loved it. So it's really accessible. But yeah, I'd read it. Just read it. It's quality. It's absolutely fantastic, and one of my favorite ever books. It's one I could just turn to at any point.
Why is it sad that they can spend unlimited lifetimes with each other? It doesn't sound that bad.
I think what it is it's they know they can never create anything long term. They know they never want to have a family because they know they're going to die before they can support that family. So they spend instead of just making the most of the time that they've got and enjoying it, they spend so much time trying to find a way to stop the inevitable that by the time they come to the conclusion they can't stop it, the actual time they've got left is really minimal. And it's very much a case of it's almost trying to, like you said, Alex, actually what they've got is amazing. But when you've got something amazing, what a lot of us do is then try to find a better version of it or try to find an answer for it. And this is a
Yeah.
really good example of that, where they spend majority of it trying to instead of looking at it going, God, you know, if every time we come back to life, we're 5 years old or even we still get X amount of years together, more than anyone else would have. They spend all that time trying to stop death and live one life where they can actually like have a family and all that. So yeah, it's just a bit more good
Yeah, as I
though.
said, it sounds
Good
like
read.
they've got a good thing going. But I think it'd be fun to think of what you do, and then I think, sadly, what I would actually do is just spend unlimited lifetimes doing the exact same things over and over again. Because you go and go, oh yeah, one life I'm going to really learn the piano. Or one life I'm going to learn all the languages, and then you do it, and you go, I can't be asked. I'm just going to watch TV again. Because you just that's what happens in the moment. Maybe if you knew you could have unlimited time, but then if you had like 10 years to live, and that was the norm, and then you got told you might have 80, you'd be in the situation we have now, and people still watch TV and waste time. So
That's
True. Do
that's
podcasts.
and do podcasts and have fun with their friends. Very important socializing.
I take it we're all fans of the film Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say yeah, not huge. I quite like it. It's of its time, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
yeah.
I like the idea of the groundhog life as a time travel concept. I think that's got legs. Have you guys seen the film In Time? I think it's called In Time.
Yes, is
That
that the
Justin
one with
Timberlake. Justin
yes.
Timberlake, am I getting that wrong?
Yes.
Oh, I think I've definitely got the name of the film wrong because it's definitely not got Justin Timberlake in it.
Are you thinking of one with Brendan Gleeson's son?
Yes, I am. Yeah, Dom.
Yeah, I think In Time is the one with
Oh,
Timberlake, because that's good as well. Maybe they're both called In Time.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Answers on postcards.
Yeah, text in to 85058.
Answers in the next live.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like like time travel. I think has never been done that much justice, and that I've heard good things about Replay Tom, and it sounds like it does do the concept. Give it its due.
Time loop as well is quite a significant sub niche.
Yes.
Have you seen Edge of Tomorrow? Tom
Yeah.
Cruise.
yeah.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Good film, and not to keep coming back to it, but it is the birth of all creativity. There's a very good Stargate SG-1 episode where they're in a time loop, and every time it starts, Jack O'Neill gets no Till. He gets a door opened into his face. At which the first 250 times he's very polite to the man, and then he punches him in the head. Yeah, so good stuff there. Who is it now? It's I don't unless you've got any more to say on replay, Tom.
No. Just think it's worth reading. Definitely, it's a good. It's just fun, like you said. I think that word with books doesn't always come up, but it is fun.
That sounds good. Right, my number three.
You've already shared yours, haven't you?
Have I?
Because it's George Martin. You had the
Oh
same book as
yes,
me, didn't you?
great, fantastic. Then we could just keep going round because I couldn't find the image. Liam, what's your number two and why?
Wait, you've shared your number 3, have you?
Yes, I went. So this is when I think it was Tom's 8 or 7 or 8. Yep, there it is. My number 3 was A Storm of Swords, George R. R. Martin.
Okay.
I feel like we gave it its due when Tom was talking about it. Great book,
We
great
did,
author.
but I will just say, to dwell on it somewhat. When we did episode 1, I was most of the way through rewatching Game of Thrones, which was just an exercise that I was doing because I had some time off work. I actually today finished the terrible, terrible final episode of season 8, and there were specific moments when I visibly had to avert my eyes from the screen because what was on the screen was so cringeworthy. I couldn't keep
Yeah,
keep them on there.
fair enough.
But even though like the experience of watching a TV show is like you start up here and you just progressively get worse and worse, really as a plateau, and then after season 5 it drops off the edge of a cliff. Like the quality of the world that Martin builds, from rewatching the series, I know that I'm going to have to go back and reread the books because it just draws you in, and there's so much stuff that the show you miss out on because they never had a chance to explore it. And rewatching the show reminds me of all like the young Griff and like all the plots that never got a chance to be aired. So
Can't wait for a reason to reread it. I'm holding off because I kind of hoping the 6th comes out, there'll be a reason to reread it.
Yeah.
I would say as well, just really quickly, if you were looking to read a Martin book that wasn't Game of Thrones, read Fever Dream. It's one of the best sort of vampire book, not like quite like. It's absolutely amazing that he wrote before he wrote the Game of Thrones books, which came out in the early 80s. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a really, really good book. So just worth a read if you come across it in the wild.
There you have it. Fever Dream, also a great album by Everything Everything. Good segue on to Liam's number 2. Tell us about your Everything Everything.
My number 2 is this
in a fleece as well.
is this meaty tome, which is called A Deepness in the Sky by Werner Vinge. I never figured out how to actually say the guy's name correctly. So I've already spoken to you guys about this book. I think when I read it, I was spamming our WhatsApp with a plot summary that nobody asked for. So I'll spare you that here as well. But this is I think the second most, maybe the third most modern book on my list. It's from 1992. It's a sequel, and the original, A Fire Upon the Deep, is often in like top tens for sci-fi lists. I bounced off the original a little bit. Like I enjoyed it, but I was not blown away. And I looked at the size of the sequel and was like, I give it a miss. I kept on hearing good things, and so I gave it a go. And oh my god, I was absolutely missing out. The second in the series, and it is just it's a 2 book series, but it's in a wider universe called the Zones of Thought. I've only read these 2. Apparently, Vinci has quite a dramatic drop off with the other stories that he sets in this world. But yeah, after Alistair Reynolds and our lovely optimistic space opera, normal service has been resumed with A Deepness in the Sky. This story is all about exploitation once again, return to form. But it's just an absolute masterpiece of having players on a board and making them move and interact in interesting ways. There's basically 3 parties that we follow. There's these kind of trading civilization who have grown wealthy and powerful by exploiting younger cultures. There's this like militarized slaver civilization who lack like advanced artificial intelligence, and so instead use this form of like mind control to build like living computers. And then there's this in between those 2 factions, you have this planet that's discovered, and it's got this race of like spider-like aliens. And a bit like one of the stories, one of the books Tom was talking about earlier, it chronicles pretty much the whole genesis of technology on this planet over the course of I don't know, 100 years at least. And yeah, you have these three super interesting factions that just play off against each other in such interesting ways. And we watch a civilization and technology develop on this planet, whilst these two cultures try and exploit them and each other. And yeah, that trifecta of exploitation, the name of my jazz band, just play in such an amazing way, amazingly written, extremely extremely compelling. And like I say, a lot of people like the first book in the series. I thought it was good but not great, but the sequel I just thought blew me away. So yeah, that's A Deepness in the Sky.
Interesting. I was just looking at it on Goodreads, and it like starts pretty good, and then it looks like it peaks at book 2, and then the reviews for book 3 are shocking,
Yeah,
absolutely shocking. I've not. It seems like you're right. It falls off a cliff completely.
It's a shame.
So yeah,
yeah.
but
When
that's
you first said it was called A Deepness in the Sky, I thought that must be about airships. Then my next thought was that would be my autobiography name if I was a pilot. That's
That's a deep cut, because only 5 people know what deepness means in that relevance.
yeah. Don't worry, we don't have broad market appeal. I'm not ruining anything.
is
No,
it
that's
is it
true.
is it fairly accessible? Like in terms of sci-fi, I guess the only question I keep asking you, because I do want to try some of these, but I know I'm not going to get in. Like Left of Anyone sounds like wave. I don't think I could get near that. Is it
Yeah,
accessible, or is it quite complex sci-fi?
I'd say on the scale of accessibility, it's mediocre. Like there's some hard sci-fi stuff, but it also doesn't require you to read the first book. Like they take place in the same world but across vast spans of time, and like there's only one recurring character, um, and the recurring character actually has his memory wiped, so that's a perfect like blank slate for the sequel. It's actually a prequel, so yeah, I'd say it's accessible enough. You have to be able to weather some of the sci-fi, more sciencey parts of SF though.
Do you think
Fair enough.
that there's something about sci-fi that makes it a bit more timeless than, or maybe timeless isn't the right word, but accessible over time than fantasy? Because if Tom and I brought up books where 1992 was the third most recent, we'd
That'd
be
be rough.
really, really struggling. Yeah, it's basically anything that happened before about 95 was almost
Shit.
impossible to read.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't know if sci-fi has just been better written for longer.
I, I don't know. I seem to think that like genres will wax and wane, right? And it feels to me like fantasy has had its moment in the sun, definitely in the like 2010s onwards. With the proliferation of people like the Sandersons of this world, and it obviously helps when you have like a cultural phenomenon like Game of Thrones, that all of a sudden fantasy is like a household thing. Everyone wants dragons, tits, swords.
Yeah,
Um, Whereas sci-fi's golden age is obviously in the 50s.
yeah.
So, and then you have new wave sci-fi, which is like 70s onwards. And then I feel like sci-fi has waned a little bit since then. Like my list is pretty much free of modern sci-fi. So I think it's more just a case of writers will write where there's demand, and where there's appetite. So yeah, there's lots of terrible fantasy from 50 years ago. Lots of shit sci-fi that's being released today. I think it's
Right.
just the genres are in different places.
Yeah.
I think part of it as well, though. I think is sci-fi. It's not obviously that the genres are completely different, but probably the concepts are similar. Um, you can have standalones with sci-fi, so you can have one book that can really hit the market, and it can really bring to life an idea, 300 pages, and then that's it, and you're done. Whereas fantasy, it doesn't matter what era it comes from, you have to have that commitment, and that can be really hard. And I think, look at the 70s and 80s and 90s, like look at people like Terry Goodkind and like Terry Brooks and all that was off in the fantasy world. Like who's reading like 25 book series where there's 1,000 pages where it's basically Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings light. Whereas like if I think about horror, it reminds me of the sci-fi in that way. That all my favorite horror books from like the 70s and 80s. There's very few, it's 25, 30 years that I pick up because that was sort of the golden era. I think it stays in the memory more because it's more you can really struggle to put my finger on what's happened in these books because they're over like 3,000 pages. And I think, whereas you can, not all yours, Liam, but some of yours, you're like, it's 250, 300 pages, and you've got a real visceral idea of what happened because you read it in a really short period of time. And, and I don't know whether that is part of it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's more of a tradition to have shorter books. Asimov was mostly short stories, wasn't he? And Philip K. Dick and some of the bigger names in sci-fi are kind of well known for not
Yeah.
tome type things, whereas fantasy is very associated with. Oh, I like fantasy. You must like Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that's why maybe people or the classic audience had more patience for that and just follow it over tens of thousands of pages.
Mm.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree. I mean, just coincidentally, there's no Asimov on my list. I actually think he was kind of a terrible writer.
yeah.
But he was like the poster boy of golden age sci-fi. I think he's a bit of a hack, if I'm honest.
Oh, the big opinions. I've never read any Asimov, but I assume that would be
No, me neither, no.
a big opinion in the sci-fi world.
I've read iRobot.
Get rid of your surname. Get rid of your surname, quick.
Foundation's pretty good. Foundation's not bad. But yeah. So yeah, that's
Two.
That's yours. On to you,
Oh,
Tom.
so it's one of the big ones and one of the most beautiful books ever. Just gonna show it. It's The Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie.
Oh, you fucking bastard.
is that your
Have you
number
got that?
two,
So,
Alex?
My number two, yeah.
oh, is it? Let's talk about it together because I thought we'd end up talking about it.
Yeah,
I think instead of just talking about this book, let's just talk about Abercrombie in general. I would
I'll put myself on mute.
great,
Enjoy.
great.
I just want to show like this
Great
one's
choice, by the way.
signed as well by the big dog, and it's an
By
absolutely
Julia.
stunning book. Stunning. Um, I mean, I would Abercrombie's probably the best fantasy, kind of similar to gritty fantasy, no fantasy, character-driven fantasy. The guy's gone, and this book is the second of the trilogy. The 10th book set in the First Law World, or the ninth book set in the First Law World. Um, it's, I mean, how would you describe it? It's he takes all the stuff, some stuff George R. Martin does. He makes it more visceral. He brings the characters to life more, and it's more relatable because I think it's got a British sort of twist to it that I don't think Martin's able to kind of bring to life.
I would
Um,
say it's like sexy paper.
but it's just this book is unbelievable, and how it's very rare in fantasy. I don't know if it's the same as sci-fi except for the second. Well, you just said the same. The second book in the series of a trilogy is
Yeah.
normally a really difficult one to nail, and this one's just unbelievable. Just got a
It's,
couple of things I was going to mention about it, and then I'll just let you. But the characters in this book.
did you
Sorry,
both
Leo.
did you both select the second book in the series as your number two?
Yep. I had
Yeah.
Trouble with Peace as my number two and best book by him.
Just put in perspective, Leon, this guy's written a trilogy in the First Law, then three standalones, short story in another trilogy. Every book except for one is like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 read, and yet this is just unbelievable. It's set, so the first trilogy of the First Law world, its then subsequent trilogy is set 25 years down the line, and
Yeah.
it calls us into the world, but the world's moved on. And I keep going back to the characters, and the story is
Yeah.
all brilliant, right? But the characters are just like all time. Like you talk about like your Tyrions in Game of Thrones. Like you think of in this, you've got your Orsos, you've got your Savines, you've got your Leo, Rick, Bova, Starry, all the people that I remember, and it's just you feel like you're there. I'd say the one thing that I think that Abercrombie does, which no one does close, is you have all your sort of point of view characters, and then all of a sudden he'll hit you with a chapter where you'll get two paragraphs from 10, 15 different characters are just in the world, in the battle you're involved with or in the world, and he'll just ping you and you'll get such a feeling of what's going on around you. And I don't know. I can't really do it justice by talking about him. I don't. Alex, you might be better, but I just this book. I remember we actually. I think we might have done a review of this book
I
on a
think we
pod.
did.
We
I
we
think we
did. We
did.
recorded like an hour. We got an hour on this somewhere,
Probably
and
more than that. Let's be
Imagine talking
honest.
for an hour about books.
it, it's this is an all
Crazy.
timer, and this is a book that when I met him. I think you both know the story. And when I met him and called him a top fucking geezer because I just panicked, didn't know what to say to him.
I
He
never
signed my
tire of
book.
hearing the story.
Yeah. Me and Luke met him. Queued up
Panic,
for
they call him a
ages.
geezer.
Luke was in the queue behind me. I was like, "Meet my mate Luke, we think you're a top fucking geezer." And Luke's like, "Oh God, what fuck yeah." He is a top fucking geezer though. He's a
He
proper
is.
lad as well.
He is
He's
a
an
top fucking
absolute
geezer.
lad. He's just like a yeah, Alex adds talk lad. If you can.
I definitely think he's top fucking geezer. I would love to have a pint with Joe Abercrombie. But he's not going to go for pints. The likes of us. He is amazing. He's the best character author that I've ever read by a long distance. If you ask me my top 10 characters of all time in all books, he would probably comfortably take up 6 of them. Yeah, and there's characters that aren't in this book that are sort of the best ever. Tom says this is a second in a trilogy. It reads like a conclusion, a crescendo.
Yeah,
Even when you're reading
does
at
yeah.
the time, you're like, what the fuck is the third book going to be? Because he's settled everything. He's set it up nice. Right, he set it up nicely, brilliantly, and the third act came in the second half of this book. Where's he going to go from here? And then incredibly, he does find great ways to go from there. But yeah, it's yeah, he's very very clever, and I know lots of authors are very clever, but there's genuinely things that happen in a lot of his books, including this one, where you realize the complexity around it, and it just blows your mind. You could think it was something, and he's like exponentially operating at levels of detail that you couldn't even conceive of until you maybe go for a reread, and then you're like, still not sure, and then you maybe try and read it the third time and go, oh right, and you're still always learning about things that he had going, and like Tom says, it's 25 years in the future from the previous trilogy, and the amount of links and Easter eggs and things that he crops up. You don't have to appreciate those, but there's just a level of detail woven in for depending on where your knowledge of the series and how much you care about that is. Because if you're just shallow and you want to read a great story, there's so much in it for you as well. Like
He has a way to like talk about like battles and fight scenes and when he does it, you get such a different perspective from so many different characters that you really feel he brings it to life. And he even has these like one-on-one battles where there's like a circle around them, and I can't explain it, but it's just amazing how he brings it to life. And there's a few twists that you don't see come in. But I think Alex mentioned it. Is it a compliment? I'd say it probably is. If George R. Martin died tomorrow, I genuinely think
yeah,
potentially he generally would get asked to finish it
I
because
don't think he'd
he's
do a
that
great job.
highly regarded because he's unbelievable, and yeah, and they've got the rights for one of his standalones, haven't they? Alex is one of your
Yes,
favourites. They're
that's so cold.
making a film of Cole with Rebecca Ferguson playing. It's like a revenge one with the character called Monza Mercato, and hopefully when that comes out, I'm hoping what it'll do is take Joe from being like really out there to being like look on them to be like Martin level fame
I,
because he definitely should be 100%.
I hope so. I was sort of hoped that they'd have a bit more faith in him to do the first trilogy, but and my only, because it's one of my favorite books by him, and some of my favorite characters. My only hesitation with this choice is that I hope people don't watch it and go, "That's Kill Bill in a fantasy setting," because it's a female protagonist on a revenge story. Um, and she kills like 7 people. It's like it's not exactly the plot of Kill Bill.
I hope as well that if they ever do whatever it's on TV or film needs the Game of Thrones treatment, it has to be as bleak as it is. Otherwise, if they try and sanitize it, it just won't work.
And it needs
Um,
budget as well. You need to set that scene,
mm,
give it some justice.
yeah. So yeah,
Um,
yeah. But there is one book, sorry, that he wrote that was called Heroes, which is set in the First World War, which is basically just a 400-page battle scene.
yes,
And
and
you
we've
and unbelievable.
Yeah, he's the best at showing the smaller characters' perspectives, like you said. Yeah, we've had a go at some authors for long, protracted battle scenes, but only because they can be boring. Whereas I find myself never being bored with his action scenes. He tells it through so many people's eyes, and yeah, you just see the little people, and it doesn't normally end well. So it's like they're a lot of bystanders to the main plot, but he actually gives them some voice, and then it just gets cut short normally because they're caught up in what's going on in the main guys. But yeah, the only reason that he's my favorite author, and the only reason that he's not a number one is because the specific instructions we set for this with all time just books on their own. But shall we get Liam's one in this one? I think we should probably stop and come back. So
it's not Russia. Yeah, it's not Russia one. Yeah,
ones, because we are on the ones now, aren't we?
Yeah, this is it.
We the ones.
Okay, well, I'll ignore that and send a new meeting request to you all, and we can get our ones done. Cool. I'll see you then.
All right, bye.